In the quiet town of Maple Hollow, the rain fell steadily over cracked sidewalks and old brick buildings. Ethan, a 26-year-old auto mechanic, worked late into the night in his modest garage. Grease-stained hands, tired eyes, and a heart full of burden, he had been taking care of his chronically ill father ever since his mother died in a car accident a decade ago. Life hadn't given Ethan a fair shot. His father had fallen deep into debt after multiple failed businesses, and now the weight of it all rested on Ethan's shoulders. They lived in a worn-down rental on the edge of town, surviving day by day on small repair jobs. Ethan once dreamed of escaping this suffocating life and moving to the city, but every time he packed his bags, he looked into his father's tired eyes and stayed. His only wish? To clear the crushing debt and give his dad one last, peaceful chapter in life. That rainy evening, as thunder rolled in the distance, Ethan's phone buzzed with an unknown number. On the other end, a raspy, confident voice. "Ethan, this is Mrs. Whitmore. We need to talk. Meet me at Caraway Cafe, 7 p.m. sharp." Ethan arrived at Caraway Cafe right on time, soaked from the rain. The bell over the door chimed as he stepped inside, shaking off his damp coat. The place was nearly empty, save for a few late-night coffee drinkers and a solitary woman seated at a corner table. She was striking, not because of her beauty, but because of her presence. Her white hair was elegantly pinned back, and she wore a sharp navy coat with pearls that whispered wealth and authority. "You must be Ethan," she said, her voice as crisp as the air outside. "I'm Victoria Whitmore." Ethan hesitated, unsure of why a woman like her would want anything to do with him. He sat down slowly. "You said you needed to talk?" Victoria leaned in, her eyes piercing. "I know about your father's debt, and I know you've been doing everything you can to pay it off." Ethan's heart skipped. How did she know? Was this some kind of scam? "I can make all of it disappear," she continued, "every last cent." He narrowed his eyes. "What's the catch?" She took a long sip of her tea and looked him dead in the eye. "Marry me." Ethan froze. "I'm 71, she said plainly. "This isn't about love. It's legal. You become my husband, on paper. You live with me. That's all. In exchange, I'll pay off everything, secure your future, and when I die, my estate will go to you." It sounded like a twisted fairy tale. "Why me? You're young, unattached, and desperate. I need someone like you. Trust me, it's not random." Ethan felt like the ground had shifted beneath him. He stared at her, searching for any hint of deception in her cold, calm expression. He didn't answer right away. That night he lay awake in his tiny bedroom, listening to the rain tapping against the windows. The offer echoed in his mind. Was she insane? Was he? His conscience wrestled with the decision. Could he trade his freedom for a lifeline? Was this an opportunity or a trap? By morning his mind was made up. He called her. "Are you serious about this?" he asked. "I don't make empty promises," she replied. "As soon as we sign, the debt vanishes." Ethan took a deep breath. "All right, I'll do it." A week later, the strangest wedding Maple Hollow had ever seen took place. No guests, no church bells, just a quiet legal ceremony in Victoria's grand but eerily empty mansion. As they signed the certificate, Ethan's hand trembled. From that moment on, he wasn't just a mechanic anymore. He was Victoria Whitmore's husband, and deep down he knew. Nothing about this was going to be simple. Just 3 days after the wedding, Ethan stood in the massive hallway of Victoria's mansion, staring at the antique chandelier above. The air was cold, not from the temperature, but from something deeper. The silence in the house was suffocating. The staff moved like shadows, only appearing when summoned and vanishing just as quickly. Victoria remained distant. She spent most of her time locked away in her study, emerging only during meals. Their interactions were brief, formal. It didn't feel like a home, it felt like a transaction. One evening over a quiet dinner, Ethan finally broke the silence. "Do you have any family? Children? Grandkids?" he asked. Victoria paused, set her fork down, and looked at him with her sharp blue eyes. "Everyone I loved is gone. Don't worry yourself with things that no longer matter." Her words chilled him. There was no sadness in her voice, only finality. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Something about this entire arrangement didn't sit right. He wandered the mansion's long halls until he came across Victoria's office door, slightly ajar, light spilling out. Inside, she sat at her desk, papers stacked high. "You need to sign these," she said without looking up. He stepped closer, eyeing the documents. "What are they?" "Just finalizing the legal transfer of certain assets and responsibilities. We talked about this." Ethan's gut screamed at him. He flipped through the pages. Some were about shared property, others he couldn't make sense of. But something caught his eye, a page that listed a massive financial liability now tied to his name. "Wait, what is this?" he asked, alarmed. Victoria's voice remained calm. "It's just legal formatting, a requirement." Ethan looked at her, seeing her differently for the first time. Her face was composed, but her eyes had a glint of control, like a puppeteer waiting for the strings to move. "I don't think I can sign this," he said, stepping back. Victoria stood slowly, her shadow stretching across the polished floor. "Ethan, we made a deal, and I always keep my promises, but you must do the same." He felt a cold sweat forming on his neck. "Are you threatening me?" She smiled, calm, eerie. "I'm reminding you. You signed up for this life. Now live it." The next morning, Victoria was gone before sunrise. Ethan, alone in the house, wandered into the kitchen and found the head housekeeper, Mrs. Carter. Her face was pale and cautious. "Can I ask you something?" he said. She hesitated. "What is it? What happened to Victoria's family?" She looked around, lowered her voice. "Her husband died in that very study. Her son disappeared. Every person who's ever gotten close to her ends up gone." Ethan's blood ran cold. Whatever this was, it wasn't just about marriage or money. He was trapped in something far darker than he ever imagined. Haunted by what the housekeeper had said, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he was living inside a carefully constructed lie. The grandeur of the mansion began to feel like a gilded prison. Every corner he turned, every whisper of the wind through the empty halls, felt like a warning. He had to get answers. The next day, without telling Victoria, Ethan drove back to his hometown, Ridgebrook. The roads were wet with spring rain, and his heart pounded with every mile. He wasn't just searching for peace of mind. He was chasing the truth. He started by speaking with old friends of his father. Most were reluctant to talk, brushing off the past like dust on a shelf. But finally he found Mr. Hammond, a retired banker who had once worked closely with Ethan's dad. "Your father," Mr. Hammond began carefully, "was a brilliant man, but ambition, it made him dangerous." Ethan sat forward. "What do you mean?" "There was a woman," the old man continued, "Victoria Whitmore. She and her husband invested everything in a real estate development with your dad. Your father promised high returns, but it was a con. He pulled out at the last second, took the money, and left them ruined." Ethan's chest tightened. That can't be true. My dad would never. But he did, Mr. Hammond said quietly. Her husband took his own life. Her teenage son vanished. She lost everything. Ethan stared into space, feeling the room close in on him. All these years he had idolized his father, struggling, sacrificing, surviving. But now a horrifying picture began to emerge. His father hadn't just failed. He had betrayed. That's why Victoria chose him. Not out of pity, not even out of loneliness. Revenge. When Ethan returned to the mansion, the walls felt even colder than before. He walked through the echoing halls until he reached Victoria's study. She was there, sipping her tea, waiting, as if she knew he'd come. "You went digging," she said without looking up. Ethan's voice trembled. "You married me to get back at my father, didn't you?" Victoria slowly raised her eyes. No denial, no apologies. "I wanted him to feel what I felt. Loss, betrayal, powerlessness," she said. "But he was too weak to face it. So I found the only thing he cared about. You." Ethan clenched his fists. "You used me." "I gave you a choice," she said coldly, "and you signed the papers." For the first time, Ethan realized that he wasn't just the victim of a trap. He was the legacy of another man's sins. But now the question wasn't about who to blame. It was about what to do next. That night, Ethan sat alone in the guest room that had never truly felt like his own. The shadows stretched long across the walls, and the silence of the mansion pressed heavily on his chest. He replayed Victoria's words in his mind, every syllable dripping with vengeance. But he wasn't going to let her win. He had one advantage now: knowledge. She had underestimated him. He remembered someone who might be able to help: Luan, his college roommate, now a practicing attorney in the city. Ethan hadn't spoken to him in years, but desperate times don't allow for hesitation. He dialed Luan's number with shaking fingers. "Ethan, is that really you?" Luan sounded surprised. "I need your help," Ethan replied, his voice urgent. "I think I've been tricked into signing fraudulent documents." They met the next morning at Luan's office. Ethan laid out everything: the sudden marriage, the paperwork, the strange behaviors, and the chilling revelation about his father's past. Luan listened quietly, then leaned forward. "Do you still have the documents you signed?" "Yes." "Do you remember reading all of it before signing?" "Not entirely. She pushed me, and I trusted her, stupidly." "That may be our way in," Luan said. "If the contents of the documents were altered after your signature, we can build a case of fraud." Ethan's heart raced. "How can we prove that? Video, cameras. Was there any surveillance footage in her office?" A flicker of hope sparked in Ethan's mind. "Yes. She had a desktop system that monitored the house. I saw the camera icons on her computer." "That's our shot," Luan said firmly. "Get that footage. If we can find proof she switched the papers after you signed, we can take her down." Back at the mansion, Ethan's demeanor changed. He smiled politely, nodded at the staff, and made small talk with Victoria over dinner. He knew better now. She thrived on control. He couldn't let her see the fear in his eyes. That night, once the house had quieted down and Victoria had retreated to her room, Ethan crept into her office. The lights from the security system blinked faintly. He sat at the computer, heart pounding, fingers trembling. He searched through folders, praying the footage still existed. Then he found it. There it was, clear as day. The moment Ethan signed the documents, walked out of the room, and Victoria calmly removed the signed set, replacing them with another. His blood ran cold, but his hands moved quickly. He copied the footage onto a USB drive and shut down the system. As he turned to leave, a voice sliced through the darkness. "I knew you'd come here." Victoria stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, her face a mask of rage and elegance. Ethan gripped the USB in his pocket. He looked her straight in the eye. "I know what you did, and now I can prove it." Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears as Victoria stepped into the room, her heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor. The space between them shrank, but the air grew thick with tension. "You think that USB will save you?" she whispered. "You're in my world, Ethan. My house, my rules." But something had shifted in Ethan. The fear that once clouded his judgment was gone. In its place stood clarity, purpose, and defiance. "You used me to pay for something I never did," he said, steady and calm. "But I'm not the scared kid who walked into this house anymore." Victoria's gaze narrowed. "You're still just a boy playing a man's game." "Maybe," Ethan replied, "but I'm not playing alone." Just then, headlights flashed across the windows. A knock pounded at the front door. Ethan moved quickly, passing Victoria in the hall without another word. He opened the door to find Luan standing with two detectives and a warrant in hand. "Victoria Whitmore," the officer said firmly, "we have reason to believe you committed fraud and altered legal documents under false pretenses. We're here to investigate." Victoria's perfect composure cracked for a moment. "You don't know what that boy's father did to me." "We're not here about his father," the detective replied. "We're here because you deceived him." As they moved inside, Ethan felt a surge of something he hadn't felt in years. Control. But the road didn't end there. Over the next few months, Ethan worked tirelessly to clear his name. With Luan's help, they exposed Victoria's manipulation. The evidence from the surveillance footage was undeniable. The fraudulent documents were voided, and Ethan was released from the crushing debt she had transferred to him. It wasn't easy. Rumors spread, reporters came calling, and his private life became front-page gossip. But through it all, Ethan never lost focus. He took a job at a small law firm Luan connected him with. At night, he enrolled in online legal courses. He wasn't just fighting back anymore. He was building a future. For the first time in his life, Ethan wasn't surviving. He was choosing. Victoria was sentenced to house arrest pending full investigation into her financial history. But when Ethan received a handwritten letter from her weeks later, he opened it with a heavy heart. Inside were just 9 words. "Live differently than the man who raised you." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't forgiveness. It was something else, an acknowledgement that the cycle had ended. Ethan folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. He had been dragged into someone else's revenge, but he had turned the story around. Now it was time to write his own. 1 year later, the mansion on Waverly Hill stood empty. The once manicured hedges had grown wild, and the ivy crawled unchecked along the stone walls. Victoria Whitmore's empire had crumbled, quietly like a dying whisper. But down in the heart of the city, in a modest apartment above a local bookstore, Ethan lived a different life. The walls were lined with case law books, sticky notes, and dreams scribbled on legal pads. He'd passed his first year of law school with top marks. He worked part-time assisting at a legal aid clinic, helping people like his younger self. Lost, stuck, searching for a way out. He no longer sought shortcuts. The pain he'd lived through, the betrayal, the manipulation, the unraveling of the truth about his father, had changed him. But it hadn't broken him. Instead, it lit a fire within. He walked through life now with clarity and conviction. Every step he took was deliberate. Every choice he made was honest. One afternoon, Ethan returned home to find a letter slipped under his door. No return address, but he knew the handwriting. Victoria. Inside was a photo of a much younger her, holding a boy, her son, long lost to bitterness and exile. On the back, she had written, "Some debts can't be repaid, but some legacies can be rewritten." Ethan stared at the photo for a long time. He had once believed that justice was about punishing those who hurt us. But now he understood something deeper. True justice isn't revenge, it's redemption. Victoria never found peace through vengeance, only more emptiness. She spent decades building walls of gold to protect a broken heart, only to realize that no amount of wealth could fix what hatred had hollowed out. Ethan took that lesson to heart. He didn't let the bitterness take root. Instead, he grew from it. He volunteered on weekends, mentoring troubled youth. He shared his story, not the scandalous parts, but the lessons about trust, about forgiveness, about resilience. His name was no longer whispered in rumors. It was spoken in respect. On the anniversary of his father's death, Ethan stood at the old family gravesite. The wind was cool, the sky pale with evening light. "I don't know if you were a good man," he whispered, "but I know I won't repeat your mistakes." He placed the letter and photo from Victoria beside the headstone. Then he turned, walked away, and never looked back. In the end, Ethan wasn't defined by what had been done to him. He was defined by what he chose to do next. And in choosing kindness over revenge, growth over bitterness, and truth over illusion, he found something far greater than wealth. He found freedom. Sometimes the deepest pain doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the shadows of those we once trusted, even loved. Ethan's journey reminds us that we are not defined by the mistakes of those who came before us. We can carry the scars, acknowledge the wounds, but we don't have to repeat the cycle. Revenge may feel powerful in the moment, but it leaves behind a trail of emptiness. True strength is found in breaking free from bitterness, in choosing to live with integrity when betrayal tempts us to become someone we're not. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about releasing ourselves from the grip of the past. Ethan didn't erase what happened. He didn't excuse it, but he chose to rise above it. And in doing so, he found something Victoria never did: peace. We all have a choice. When life hands us pain, we can either let it poison us or transform us. Ethan chose transformation. Many of us carry silent burdens: family debts, broken trust, generational trauma. But like Ethan, we're not powerless. Whether you're 25 or 75, it's never too late to break away from toxic legacies and write your own ending. You don't need a dramatic courtroom moment to reclaim your life. It starts with one choice: to live honestly, to seek truth, to forgive when it's hardest. Help someone in need. Learn something new. Rewrite your story, starting today. Let Ethan's story be a reminder: you are not your past. You are your next decision. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like and share with your friends. Your support keeps these stories alive. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new episode. And if today's story touched your heart, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Take care, stay well, and see you in the next story.